hold me tight. I'm messing with your mind. My eyes are sharp like your blade. I drive your mind insane. Drive your mind insane. So stick around. So stick around.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the Coders Cantina. My name is Mike, and I'm your host tonight. So, I have to be honest with you. It's it's the third time that I'm now kick-offing this episode or this stream where I'd like to build something with you together, building it in public, getting feedback and so forth. The first time I had audio issues with my stream, and the second time I rushed through things and was really confused. And that's why I sat back and started it from scratch. And today's focus of this episode will be to talk about the goals of the project. So let me fire up Obsidian. It's a note-taking tool where we note down what we would like to achieve with the project. So let's give it a proper name. So today is the 20th of May. And the goal of my project will be to build an image server. What is an image server? An image server is something used in the web to actually deliver images. So it's something where you can upload bigger images to some sort of storage, and the image server is responsible to deliver the optimal format, the optimal dimension of the image to your visitors of your websites. I can briefly show you what an actual product is doing. So I already made a small image server. Years ago, it was 2017 for one of our projects, where I implemented this thing in kind of a rush, and this time I would like to make it as a proper service and also make it publicly available as open source tool, so you can self-host the application. On the other hand, I would like to offer it as a software as a service, and that's why I'm building it in public to get feedback and also let you be part of my journey, where we figure out the pricing, how to get customers, the marketing stuff, but also the implementation stuff. So it will be covering multiple aspects of getting a startup up and running. So for me, it's a side hustle. So bear with me if we don't make huge progress every week. I try to focus on it. There will be vacation times where I will be off, but in the end, please enjoy the journey. Back to the tool. As you can see, we have this image here on the left, and if I open it in the new tab, you can see the image is delivered via a specific URL. This URL has some parameters in. So the first thing is, let's ignore that uploads for now. But the important stuff is this. So we have fit, which in our case is the operation performed on the image. Then we have certain parameters, like in this case width and height, and then we have image path from within our storage. So this image is delivered. There is also another thing called original, where I can request original image. As you can see, it's a really huge one with lots of details, which would be too much to handle for mobile websites where you have smaller viewports and don't need an image with dimensions of up to 3200 pixels. And that's where image servers come in. They resize, crop images to the desired dimensions. In our case, it's a fit operation, which means I would like to have 588 by 406 pixels, and the image will be fitted into that region. So if I change this, for example, to 300 by 400, we get another reduced and cropped image. Or I can go even really crazy, 200 by 500, and the crop area is a very small, narrow banner-like thing, or the other way around, 600 by 200. And it always tries to fill the whole space. As you can see, the returned image is 600 by 200. So that's the basic idea, what the tool is doing. And yeah, let's start a little bit with the ideation to get our goals and maybe also some decisions already ready. As it's the third time that I'm starting this series, I already decided on a name. The name of the tool will be Illum. Also a backstory why Illum, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and the inspiration was kind of taken out of the Star Wars galaxy or the franchise. And Illum is the planet where every young Jedi has to go find their kyber crystal, which is then used to build their sabers. And I found it a quite good fit for it. Already registered 2 domains, so that's also something I have to decide later. So let's call it domains, and we have for one illum.to and illum.ws. I'm not yet sure how to use those domains, two domains. So one idea would be to actually use that as marketing website, and the other one as the core application where all images are delivered, core application. Then focus on the key features. So it's key features. Apparently one feature is to perform resizing and cropping on images. So that's the key feature. One thing, the images need to be stored somewhere. So in some cases, in the example I've shown before, the images are stored in an S3 bucket, but that might not be the case for every customer. So perhaps there's something where they use a normal HTTP endpoint, and we grab the image, cache it on our side, resize, crop, whatever is needed, and then deliver it. So use different source adapters, let's call it that way. Adapters, for example, S3, HTTP endpoint, maybe SFTP, something like that. Then we would like also to cache things on our side. So the main reason why we offer this service or use that service is that mobile websites needs to be, or every website need to be fast, and therefore it's good to have a reduced payload, so the users don't have to download the whole internet when they come to your website. And so we would deliver fast images, and also the operation, like the initial resizing, cropping needs to be fast. So fast image processing pipeline. The other thing is, as I mentioned, when the image is processed once, we should cache it on our end. And for this, I'd like to use two different scenarios or opportunities. The first one is a CDN. A CDN is a content delivery network, so it's caching things on the near to the user. So if you use a CDN like CloudFront from AWS, they have different locations around the world where they can deliver cached files. So if you offer an image, and someone from the US is accessing it, there will be edge locations in the US, and other users don't need to access the service from other regions of the world. So use CDN caching and use local caching. Why local caching? It can be the case that CDN has not already fetched the image. So coming back to the example from before, if someone from the US is accessing the site, they fetch an image, and then someone from Asia is accessing the site, and no local edge cache from the CDN has the image fetched. So they would also hit our origin server, and hence we would reprocess the image again, and it might might end in some sort of delay for the end user, because every image processing takes a little time. So key features: we have perform resizing and cropping on images. So for that we also need to offer different modes of resizing and cropping. So there are different use cases. The other thing I would like to address here is that we would like to use some sort of post-processing. So maybe do a little bit of sharpening, contrast, adjustments, whatever. So let's call it apply filters to images, sharpening, color correction, saturation, and so forth. And the other thing is that also comes in handy for certain use cases that some customers would like to apply some sort of watermark. So apply a watermark to the images. One thing that is also common these days to deliver images in a optimal format. So we use JPEGs for photographs with rich colors, contrast, and whatsoever. And then we have, for example, PNG, which is more for graphics. PNG also offers the opportunity to have transparency. The difference between those formats, JPEG is not lossless and PNG is lossless. So you don't lose any image quality or pixels or whatever. So if you see there are images saved as JPEGs, they always tend to have, if the quality is not right, they tend to have these sort of artifacts. That's because of the algorithm. And one thing that is mainly suited in the web side of things, it's WebP. It's a new format which tries to eliminate the shortcomings of JPEGs and PNGs. So it's a format where you can decide if it's lossless or lossy. And the other hand, it's also very optimized for the web. The encoding takes a little bit longer, but in the end, the decoding, which means rendering in the browser, is really fast, and the file size is reduced compared to using JPEGs and PNGs, while retaining the same or even having better quality. So that's also something where all SEO specialists take their eye on it to focus on delivering in this modern format. And we can't force the user to upload WebP format. So that's something I'd like to address with this product to allow users to deliver the format that is desirable. So format conversion is one thing. So deliver deliver modern web formats. As I mentioned, the idea behind is to offer this as a software as a service, also as open source. And for this software as a service, we also need something for users to log in, to register, to buy the service, to manage their account. And therefore, I'd like to split those key features up into key features, image delivery, and the other thing would be key features dashboard, or yeah, let's put it that way. So key features dashboard, we will need some sort of user registration. I also like to keep things very open, and therefore I'm not that fan of tying things to one user, and there might be the situation that multiple users from one organization, from one company are using the service. So for me, it's like having a user registration, but also an organization structure where users can be part of and invite other users. So invite other users. So that's something that is situated under the organization structure. And then there might be the need to assign different roles to users, so role-based permissions, user registration, onboarding is something that is needed there. So with user registration, with organization structure, and then the users log in and they see some sort of dashboard. And this dashboard needs to have some statistics about usage of the service. Then we would need something where users can configure stuff. So the idea is to use two modes actually, how to operate. If we switch back to the example I've shown you, I mentioned that we should ignore this uploads subpart of the URL for now. And that's because this is used to configure the service. So there's the possibility to have multiple configurations, and that's something that determines the configuration that is used for the current request. And it might be the situation for the service to operate in this subfolder structure, but there might also be the thing that we use the subdomain to distinguish between different use cases, users, configurations. So let's put that to the key features. Two modes of operation, subdomain driven, and then URL path driven. Let's call it that way. And for the dashboard, the users then should configure stuff, so they can create, let's use the highest level, they can create configurations. These configurations need to have a unique name. This name needs to be that should be part of the URL, so it can only allow certain characters. So let's put it as Slugify. So slug is always something that is used in URLs. Unique name, and then certain configurations like the filters, like the source configuration, filtering, watermarks, and whatever comes into mind. And in my idea, this organization is, let's call it the paying customer. So this entity has all invoicing and payment related situation associated. And then users can create multiple configurations in their organization. Right. So we have the unique name, source configuration, filtering, watermarks, and therefore, if you think about this unique name and coming back to elum.ws, so it could be that one customer decides for XYZ as slug, and then it will be elum.ws, and then we have fit 600 by 400, and then we have long file name.jpg, and that will then be translated in the file path, the operation with the corresponding parameters, and XYZ as key for fetching the configuration. All right, so I think we have a comprehensive list of features for the image delivery and for the dashboard to start with. The next thing is I would like to talk about technology. So technology. I'm a backend PHP guy, so my tool of choice, my framework of choice will be Laravel as backend /API. Then we have to deal with the image conversion, image processing, and I used to do a lot of stuff with ImageMagick, so it's something I'm comfortable with. But in the end, I found something the other day. It's called libwhips, which is a very fast image processing library, and that's something I'd like to incorporate in this iteration of the service. And for everything that is related to front end, so speaking of all the dashboard stuff, I will go vue.js, and for that, it will be Vite as bundler, so preparing everything, spinning up development and local servers to actually develop the stuff. So it's Vue.js with Vite. Hosting, let's put it that way. So let's talk about hosting infrastructure. I really feel comfortable in using AWS, and that's something I have good experience in, and I will use AWS this time as well. So AWS, let's put it in front of the headline. It's AWS, which gives a good trade-off of predefined services or managed services, and the possibility to spin up some Linux machines and install whatever you like. So I really like to use managed services where possible. So in this case, we need some sort of database to store all our users, organizations, the invoicing. Let's talk about payment a little bit later in the process. So that's also where we have to think about the service. So never ever do credit card processing or something like that your own. You have to be verified, certified to do so, and it's really a pain in the ass. So there are good services out there. Also, there are good services that combine those two elements, because if you think about software as a service, you also have to think about invoicing, and invoicing comes with a whole lot of a tail of things you never heard of, like taxing. You have to tax perhaps in different tax situation per country, and that's something we won't like to focus on. So it's a startup, and we would like to move fast, and therefore rely on a service that offer invoicing, taxing, so you don't have to get your head around that. Back to the hosting situation. Hosting, I'd like to use AWS's Aurora. So in our case, it will be a MySQL based Aurora, because it fits tightly with the Laravel situation we have. Although Laravel would be open to connect to any SQL database, but in the end, it feels good. And for that, I will go perhaps serverless. So AWS offers this newest version of its MySQL compatible database that is serverless, which means it scales automatically based on the requests, and that's something we don't have to mind if we have some spikes of traffic. That the database might be too small to handle the requests. On the other hand, I mentioned it multiple times already, we use a CDN, so that's also something AWS offers out of the box. It's called CloudFront, which will be used in this project. The next thing is that we use Docker containers, so our application will be bundled and distributed as Docker, and therefore we will use ECS. It's the Elastic Container Service AWS is offering, so it's something like it can be compared a little bit to Kubernetes, but it's a little bit not feature rich as Kubernetes. The next thing is we will perhaps need something to cache stuff. And there is this Elasticache from AWS, and we will go for Redis, because why not? Then we also have the opportunity to use Redis as some sort of queuing system if needed. We will find it out, but in the end, these can be the core services to use. Speaking of requests and services we use, so requests that are coming in will in the first place hit CloudFront, and then to distribute the load between different Docker containers, we will for sure need some sort of load balancer. So there is this ELB, Elastic Load Balancer offered. It's also a managed stuff, so that's good for now. And I think I have covered everything, so major services. So there will definitely be also some certificate manager involved, IEM. One big thing is S3. So we will store our images in S3 or EFS. That's also up to discuss. We will see what file system fits better. So S3 is more this object-like approach, where EFS is something you can mount into your Docker containers, and maybe have some benefits on that side. I mentioned Docker, so we will create an image. We will look out for a good base image. I typically use the Web DevOps PHP Nginx Docker file or as a base. That's something we will figure out if there are better options. So it's the Web DevOps PHP Nginx. Why is this so? Let's take that. It's the Web DevOps PHP Nginx as base image. Then we configure certain things on our own, like cron jobs and whatever that is needed for Laravel. And this image will then be pushed to the container registry ECR from AWS, and then deployed in our ECS container service. We also will go serverless on that perspective. So we will use Fargate, which means we don't have to take care of the underlying infrastructure. So ECS offers two opportunities, and we go for Fargate, which is also more managed than doing providing the infrastructure in AWS yourself. So I had something in mind with Docker. We have to configure Nginx. So the base image will have PHP as FPM module. Then we have Nginx on top, which acts as also internal load balancer and offers the possibility to deliver and serve static files. And that's why this EFS mount option comes in handy. So we would pre-process our images, store them resized and processed in our local storage, and then we can use Nginx to deliver the image without hitting any PHP code at all. We need to configure Docker to serve static images, otherwise process with PHP. We have to install the libvips package. That's definitely not in their base installation. Good. As you can see, all those ideas are flowing out of my head. It's something I try to write down, to have everything here, maybe revisit it in an upcoming episode and see, okay, are these things still valid, and can we focus on something and improve, and then make this clearer. But I think for the key features, we have a good foundation. Let's go through it. Perform resizing and cropping on images. Use different source adapters, S3, HTTP endpoints, SFTP, whatever comes up. Fast image processing pipeline. We use CDN caching, use local caching. We apply filters to images like sharpening and so forth. Apply a watermark to images. Deliver modern web formats, especially WebP. We stated that we need two modes of operation. One is the subdomain driven. Let's be clear on that and make config.elom.ws. And the other thing will be elom, in this case not elom, domain.com, and then we have config. That's also something we have then to figure out with the configuration, organization stuff. So different different pricing tiers, and also with pricing tiers features. So, and one thing could be white labeling, custom domain, whatever. Let's split those two up. All right. Heading back to the service. It's always that when I see stuff, other things come into my mind. So going back to the dashboard, we definitely need cache clearing. That is one of the shortcomings of the current implementation. So cache clearing, that means local file and CDN URLs, and that needs to be very intelligent. So we would need to keep track of every image that we have processed, but not in that way that we also in that way that we need every URL, and then we need to have one identifier that is stored or retrieved from the actual path, because in this case, if we update this image, we would need to clear every cache for any combination that would come up. So the idea is every time we hit or process one of the images with whatever configuration is there, we would store it in our database. So we would have some sort of table for our images with, for example, an hash associated, so we can track if the content of this particular file has changed. And then we would have a table containing all those, let's say, URLs that we then can use to clear our local cache and also the CDN cache. Good. So organization structure, I mentioned role-based permissions. We can invite other users, and therefore we would need two processes. The first one would be new user onboarding. So we would create a new user, and the other one is that if the user is already in the system, we would attach existing users. Or let's be singular, attach an existing user, create and onboard a new user. Then we have invoicing, we have payment. So let's emphasis on that and say, okay, use external service and group that together again. Taxes is an important stuff I mentioned. Right. Onboarding, user registration, or users. Let's call it user and have registration. First time onboarding. And I think that's good for the organization structure. Dashboard, statistics about usages of service. We have search for images. And cache clearing, then we have to create configurations. So unique name, source configuration. So we would need to have some sort of different form fields for the selected configuration. Then we allow to configure optional image filters. So that's something. When I reread filtering, I couldn't remember what we talked about. So it's configure the optional image filters, and then also set up watermarks. And now white labeling. Cool. So I think we have a good overview of what we are building in this series. It's about an image server called Illum. Maybe we also come up with a good punchline. I've heard ChatGPT is really helpful in that concern. As we're talking about ChatGPT, we also need some sort of marketing website. So that's something we are also building. So not sure if it will be some sort of static site, but in the end we need some landing page. We need to give pricing information. I would like to have customer success stories. Landing page will consist of logos of customers, a hero section with CTA to register, logos of customers, customer success stories will be there, pricing information will be there. Then we have a section about us. Then we would need a section with FAQs to show, and then there will be a link out to documentation. And as we're talking about documentation, a huge thing will be developer SDKs. So we would like the users to adopt our service, and therefore I think it's crucial to also offer some sort of a client SDKs. And therefore I will aim for providing an SDK for vue.js, for React, for Laravel as well, so that you easily can configure the image server and use it to build the correct URLs, so you don't have to tinker around and think, okay, what was the correct parameter order? So it's something, the SDK takes for you. And with that said, we can also think about going one step further and also provide something like responsive images. So it's possible to use a source set and define different images for different sizes. And that's something we could also build into our SDK, especially for the front-end frameworks, because they would know how big the screen is. And so documentation. So we will have a setup guide. We will have API documentation for every operation that is possible with the image server, or getting started, API documentation and SDK documentation. Then we will have all legal stuff like terms of conditions, and imprint. As I'm sitting in Europe, we take all legal stuff a little bit serious, and perhaps also the cookie consent banner. Good. So that's a good start, actually. I didn't think that we would be so fast through everything, but perhaps we can start to set up our project, set up Laravel. So that's something I'd like to kick off right now. So there are two ways to install Laravel. There's this global helper, which I'm not using. I'm using the default composer create method, and I have to look it up every once in a while. So getting started on macOS. Nope, it's somewhere here. So it's composer create project. It's Laravel. And we go into my development library, and I've actually an old version already there, so let's rename that to have a backup. Yeah, it's the third time I'm kicking off this series, but it's now composer create project Laravel, and then let's name it Elum as our brand name. And Laravel gets installed, and then we can start PHP Storm. That's my IDE of choice. And there you go. So we can remove the default README and start with the project name, and then we can later decide of what everything needs to be in the README. Let's go through the default installation for now of Laravel. So we have different folders here. The main core logic will be in the app folder. Bootstrap is framework related. All configuration goes in there. Database, where all database related stuff is handled. We have the public folder where static files are served. Then we have the resources folder where the front-end implementation for the JavaScript and CSS side relies. And also the views if you think about rendering something with Blade. So emails in our case, because I'd like to strip or make a separation between backend and frontend. So frontend will be PWA. So that's also something we can add to our list. So it's somewhere there. Frontend as PWA, and vue.js as our framework, and Vite as our bundler. So that's something that is already set up with the default installation of Laravel. All right, so going through the folder structure, we have the console where all CLI commands come in with exception handling here. Then we have HTTP where all our controllers, middlewares, resources, requests, everything that is related to incoming requests from the browser is related. Then we have our models where business logic of the database objects reside. Then we have providers to connect and set up stuff. One folder that will be here in our case, or in my case, I really advocate for using services and keep my controllers as tidy and small as possible. So I also follow the REST principle. So I'd like to have a controller that only offers CRUD-like actions. And for everything else, if it don't fit in that category, I will implement a new controller, and therefore I always go if these are custom verbs for invocable controllers, so the class will only have one method, invoke, to really follow the REST principles. And these controllers will then translate and validate the incoming request to something that our service then can consume, and all the core business logic will reside in the services. That gives the opportunity to also have different, let's call it, entry points. So if, for example, we have something that is accessible via an HTTP controller, but also from the CLI, we just make sure that the service gets all the information it needs, and then the business logic is implemented once, and both the CLI command and the HTTP controller are calling the centralized core business logic in the service. As we are here, I also like to set up and install the packages I'm constantly using throughout my development process with Laravel. So for that, I will pull up my terminal, and one thing is Composer require the Laravel debug bar, which comes in handy to examine HTTP requests, response times, the queries that are executed during certain requests, seeing exception handling and so stuff. It's really good to have this extension or library installed in the development mode. And the next thing, actually from the same author, is the IDE helper. Or is it Laravel IDE helper? So I have some sort of auto completion going on here. That's why my terminal is not responding anymore. But let's figure that out. It's IDE helper for Laravel. And yeah, it's definitely called Laravel IDE helper. So let's get that ready. Or it's finished. So that's also a development dependency. It's a development dependency, means if we then go to deploy our stuff in production, we won't include anything that is in our dev requirements. With both of those extensions or packages, they offer customizations through a config file, and that's something we would publish in our application domain. So it's the service provider for the debug bar configuration and also for the IDE helper. And as you can see, we have both IDE helper and debug bar config file here in our config folder. The next thing, it's actually an own package I use. It's to generate hash IDs for models. What are hash IDs? So hash IDs are used to generate these strings out of numbers. So basically, when we deal with database and we have primary keys that are auto-incremented integers, it's always that if you consume APIs, you would then see something like, for example, users 2. And this comes with some certain drawbacks. So if you sign up for a service and then you see, okay, you get user ID 4, you see, okay, there are 3 users signed up before you. So to hide that, I think it's cooler to have these YouTube-like IDs. And the other thing is, you see it's user ID 4, and for you could try to enumerate through things and maybe leak something. Not that we are being careful and take care for security measurements, but in the end, obtruding these sort of IDs is in my idea, or is a good idea in my mind. Please be careful. It's not a security feature per se. It's not some sort of encryption or something. It's not unhackable, and just keep that in mind. It's just to generate unique IDs from integers. And that's something I made a library that uses some other libraries to actually use that as trait in the Laravel models, which allows then to actually expose the route key very easily, and also the route model binding is then automatically baked into Laravel, so you don't have to take care about it. And the thing with my library is that it uses a unique salt for every model, so it's not that one for, in this case, phone will translate to the same hash ID, then you would use it with, for example, users. So every model gets its unique salt, and therefore will result in a unique hash ID. So let's get that in, and this package also comes with a configuration, or at least the hash ID base package has something that I'd like to pull in. So if we go into our hash ID configuration, we see there is the salt, and that's something I always like to extract into an env. So we go for hash ID salt, and also give it some sensible default. And I also like to have not 0 as a base length, but something like 6 to have at least some some longer strings from the beginning. So if we go into a Tinker session and go hash ID if I remember correctly, then call something like that, and then encode and use 2. Hopefully that's correct. No, that's definitely not correct. How is this called? Hash IDs. Oh, it's plural. Hash IDs. To instantiate it, and there you can see we get this K5 out of it. But if we use the Laravel kind of thing, so it's the Winkler hash ID package that is our bridge between my package and the core implementation of hash ID, we then can get something out of it. So if we it's hash IDs factory, and there's the singleton app hash ID, so we can go for app hash IDs and then do encode, and also use R2. You can see we have at least 6 characters right now. So back with that short excursion into hash IDs. Yep. So Composer, we have hash ID able installed. We are using PHP 8.1. So Coders, Cantina, Elum, it's a project. We'll definitely come up with a punchline, and the license will be proprietary for now. Not figured out which one I will use. The thing is that I mentioned this IDE helper library I'd like to use, and that's something we can call here after every Composer update. It's artisan IDE helper generate. ANSI is good, and then we also need the meta implementation, the meta generation. So both things generate a file in the root folder. So one is specifically for PHP Storm and the other one is a general helper, because Laravel uses some sorcery or magic behind the scenes, and also has some fine syntactic sugar added to PHP and all their classes and functionalities. And that's where not every IDE figures out what functions are available and helps you with auto-completion, and those two files definitely help. All right, so we have those two files. As we are here, git ignore, we can add them as well. So PHP storm meta PHP doesn't need to be there, and also the IDE helper PHP file shouldn't be under source control. All right, let's see, we have a base controller here. I really like to follow the PSR12 code style, so we split these two traits up. Let's look into our exception hand, our authentication middleware, encrypt cookies, prevent requests during maintenance, all look good, redirect if authenticated, trim strings, nothing to clean up here, trust proxies, validate signature, CSR, so everything to set up Laravel's HTTP thing, that looks good. Then we have the user model. We will touch that definitely later. Then we have the service providers. So I think I'm not gonna using this broadcast service provider, so we can delete it for now. If we switch over to using something like Pusher or so, then we will bring it back. And if I remember correctly, there should be something in the app config file. It's already commented out, so we can safely delete it. Good. So as I've added this hash ID salt, and then we use this salt here, so that every developer that uses the application will figure out, okay, that's something I have to configure. Okay. I think that's good for now, so we can go and do git init to initialize our source control in that particular project. And then I think we can commit the initial implementation. So we have 81 unversioned files. Let's keep these example tests in place. As I mentioned, huge Star Wars fan, so I would go for Star Wars quotes as an initial commit message, and I really like the original series. So speaking of episode 4 to episode 6, and therefore I will definitely pick something from the original series, and I think that one suits our project very well. And also you will see these emojis on my end. These are called Git emojis, which help to identify the purpose of the commit at one glance and really like that. So let PHP do its analyzing and let's commit it. So the initial setup is done. We could already start with setting up our first routes, I guess. So yeah, purpose of this project is to transform images with URL parameters, and therefore I think we can start with that. So heading over to our route service provider, I would add a new route group. Let's call it route middleware. Use the API middleware, and our base path will be images. So let's group everything that is image related in that routes file. So we can now add a new file called images.php, where we define the routes to process images. And for now we will define a route. It's a get method, and it will be original for now, and Copilot did a really good thing. So the path will be original, and then the path of the image, and then we constrain the path to .star, which is means that we can have multiple slashes in our route. Let's comment that out for a second, and let's create a new controller called images original controller, and then we can re-add that. And as I mentioned, I'm going for invocable controllers for non-CRUD related methods. So this will be images, then original controller class. And there, I have a typo, original controller. Let's rename the file, and PHP Storm should also have renamed it here, right? So it's pub invoke, and then we get the path and also pull in the request. And for now, just return everything we get. Maybe not the request, but just the path. One thing I should mention is that I have installed PHP, Nginx, Redis, MySQL, everything locally in my macOS. So I'm not using Homestead or Laravel Sail. I find it better to keep my machine as tidied as possible, and I don't like to have this mess with Docker going on. So I sporadically spin up some Docker images, but in the end, I go for bare metal installation of all the services, and I'm also using dot files to manage everything in my environment, like Nginx or PHP or whatever. And just to show you, I've already created the site configuration for Nginx. So it's pointing to the folder we are using. I've given it the server name ilum.test and also a wildcard subdomain, as we're using that in our application. we are using some base configuration I can quickly pull up. So it's just that we are using SSL with HTTP2, that we have some sort of self-signed key, and we're using PHP 8.2, and then we pull in our self-signed certificate. And with that configuration, we can hit our elum.test, and we see the welcome page that comes default with Laravel. And this bar below is not default, it's the IDE, the debug bar we installed. And with that we can see some statistics about execution, boot up time, the used views, the models that are fetched, route information, queries that were executed. And now we should go to something that is original. And as you can see, we have original and then the whole path without any query parameter is passed into this path variable, and with that we can then determine our image and load it. Yes, with that said, we would need something to play around. So let's head over to Unsplash to grab a fine image. Let's go for some contrast. The other day I found a really cool bird. This one. Let's work with that. So let's call it test.jpg and move it over to our storage folder. So it's in our storage folder, just to play around and see if things are working. So we have test.jpg, and also give it a cool folder so we can test if the folder structure is working. So it's content, animals. Then we have our test.jpg. All right, so if I open original, content, animals, test.jpg, we get the path, and now we can try to really simple open it and pass the image to the front end. So it will be image file get contents. It's definitely not a good approach, because the whole image is in memory, but for now let's iterate on that. We get the file, and then we return response with image. It's 200 status code, and let's leave those. I think we have to keep the content type for the browser not to mess up, and if we give it a refresh, there we go, we have the image. And that's why I aimed for that particular image, because it has very fine detail. You see there is some grain going on in the background, so it's definitely something we can play around and see the effects of reducing the size and working with it. All right. In my opinion, we should go into our controllers and make an abstract controller to, or should we already lay out this thing into a service? Yes, we do it. So let's make a new folder called service and then call it image service. All right, and as we are here, we would need the library we talked about in our technology stuff. So it's this libvips library, which also comes with PHP bindings, and that's something we also need to pull in. So there is this, I already installed Vips on my local machine, and the thing we would then need is this library, this bridging library, which we won't use in the version 2 because everything above version or including version 2 needs FFI, which is something that allows PHP to execute other functions, external functions, and it's sometimes considered bad to do so, and the old version comes without using that FFI extension. So it's composer require, and we go for version 1. So installation has finished, and then we make just one function that is load let's start with reading local files. So it's or let's start with original. We have the path, and then we go for Vips image. I think it's image Vips, and then we have load, and I think if it's load, give load, JPEG load. What does this offer? JPEG load. Yeah, let's write to file. Okay. With this image, and then we will return the image. Write to buffer, and we go with JPEG extension and return that. What are we missing? I guess nothing. Write to buffer, unhandled exception. Okay, so with original we write it to buffer, so we read the image. So there will be some things going on, but why don't we deliver the original image? Because I also like to add the possibility to add filters and the watermarking feature for that. Image service. So that's something we go in our original controller, and I guess we go for controllers and add an controller here, which will be an abstract class controller, which extends the base controller in the directory, and we give it a constructor where we inject the image service, and we make it protected. All right, let's add that to Git, and in our original controller we can then remove the use for our base controller, and therefore we would have the image service. So I can go with this image service original and head over the path and return it. And in this case, not return it, return response. Get the return 200, and then we have a JPEG for now. Nothing has changed from the outside perspective, but we are now using our image service. We're calling original, loading the image with the image library we included, and then we write it to buffer. So one thing we could add here is format. It's JPEG, and we do dot format. Head back to our images controller, nope, to our original controller, and we could to request query and go for format and pass JPEG as default. So let's remove that for a second and see if we get an image, but not the MIME type. So that's something I'd like to figure out. Libvips MIME type. Image get vips loader. Should reliable tell which loader? Okay, and let's see what we can do here. So head over to original, go image. Oh, actually we have to translate the desired format to. So let's go for that. It's format. Yeah, we will definitely add validation here. So we pass format here, then remove that. And let's go for that for now. So we have a JPEG again, and if we open it up in the network inspector, we can see we load 3.2 megabytes. And if I go for format equals WebP, we should now get a WebP file, and it's way smaller. Oh, wait, it's 2.7 megabytes, and we shouldn't lose any quality. All right, that seems good so far. Yeah, why not try another thing like a resize controller? Resize controller. So for now, it's just playing around with the library. Extend our controller. We have the invoke method. We use our resize service, and we give maybe a different order. So width, height, and then the path. And also here we go and the format is not retrieved from this, but format equals requests, and it's the illuminate HTTP request, and then we go requests query format JPEG. Let's implement the resize method. So we also load the JPEG, and then return image resize. And therefore we would need to give a scale. I think there is a thumbnail image, and we go for that. So let's give it a try. Oh, we actually have to add the route. So it's route get resize width, height, and path. We go into our resize controller. So that's good. Then we use resize, and then we go for 500 and 300, and we have a resized WebP image, and it's 200 by 300 because it constrains the image to the dimensions. We should go for 300 by 500, and we get a bigger one. So maybe we go for 400 by 800, 600, 4 by 6 this image. And as you can see, the transformation is really fast. Although we do the overhead of resizing it, so there is an even better functionality that we could use, but we have to check the library out. So 400 by 600, and let's also open the JPEG version of it, and let's compare both. So we have nearly the same execution time, but as we can see, we have 29 kilobytes for the WebP format, and we have 39, nearly 40 kilobytes, so 10 kilobytes more than our WebP format. And I'm not sure if you can see that in the compression of the live stream. We lost a little bit of details in our WebP version compared to JPEG, but in the end we also have more artifacts in this area compared to WebP. So yeah, there are some trade-offs in lossy compressions that in a lossy compression that we have to deal with. But in the end, I think some feathers here look prettier in WebP. Yeah. We could also try to render a PNG. Also give that a comparison in terms of file size. So in this case, we have a huge file, 571 kilobytes, which indicates that PNG is not the best format for using for photos. It's more for graphics and logos and things with transparency. Cool. Let's try GIF. And I really like the performance of that library. So GIF is even smaller than the PNG. Very interesting. All right. So we played a little bit around with the image library. We made our first routes while playing with the test JPEG. We really made some progress. This image controller, original controller with the content type. So that's also something we can put into our base controller. I'm thinking about extracting the response thing, but we would need the format anyway. But that's definitely something we extract. So it's this get format. We extract it from the request. We can get rid of this as we have full type painting here, and we will extract the format. Then we can pull that up in our base controller. Oh, that was too far. I thought about in that controller. And then we have protected formats. We go for that for now. So we have the association between the possible incoming also to the desired output MIME types. And then we can make sure that we format equals request format if not in array. We could import with the 400, or we could fall back to something else. So I think we should go WebP per default, and if that's not available, we also use WebP and then return the format. And in the controller, no, in the resize controller, we then also use this get format from the request, and then we return the correct this format, and we have the correct MIME type. And I think we should also add cache control headers. So we cache publicly, and I'm not sure what this means in terms of divided by. So we go from seconds into hours, and then divided by 24. So we have 1 year of cache control headers. That's something, all the best practices for SEO and fast websites advocate to have a 1 year cache TTL on static resources like images. So original controller. So I think we can go for adding the response. It's protected function response, get the image, and I think we have to also add the format, and then we can extract this whole stuff. It's 200, then we have cache control headers as we had before in the other thing, and then let's return this response, and we go for that. also extract that image and have it that way. So original will be image equals this service original, and then return this response image and format. Let's see if we are still in a green state. Yep, working as expected. So yeah, we are now doing resizing. So for me, it's the resize is now containing the image within the dimensions. So if we see it's 400 by 600, and if I change that, we get 500 by 333, which means the image is contained within that constraint. And I think it would make sense for the resize endpoint to do so. Let's head over to our initial implementation, which we are mimicking. So the idea or the goal is also, let's write it down to our key features here. Be compatible with the original image server. All right. So let's see what this comes up. So resize 600 by 200, and the resulting image is 300 by 200. So I think resize is compatible. We will look into the documentation or in our old implementation to figure that out. But I think for resize, we are good to go right now. So the next thing we had was this kind of fit operation. So let's call it fit controller, which makes sure that the image covers the whole area. So extends controller. We will add an evoke method, import the request, and then we can implement the fit method. In this case, it's crop center. I'm not sure if this is a thing, but let's try what a Copilot came up. So it's resize, it's fit 400 by 500, not found. Why not? Because we haven't added the route here. So it's fit, width, height, path, fit controller, and we get the image that is 400 by 500. If you go 500 by 300, why not? We get the image that is contained there. Cool. Really good, really cool. All right. I'm really happy about that. The thing is, I think this fit also comes with another crop option. And let's see, nickname. There are blend modes, and there should be some crop modes. Let's see, thumbnail. libs crop strategy. There's something like smart crop, and let's see what smart crop does. Here we go. I think that's strategy, entropy, smart crop. Smart crop. Yeah, okay, that's a thing. So now we have to figure out how to use that in blend mode access. Let's see. We figure it out together. Examples. Watermark texts. Well, that's to adjust the contrast. Sigmodial things. Interaction with image magic. I would rather be happy to see blend mode. I'd rather figure out how to use the smart crop strategy. Let's head over libvips to PHP. Maybe there is something. Okay, we can also add a quality here. That's good to know. So there's a documentation. There is crop. Smart crop. Image autodoc. Yeah, but I'd like to know how to which smart crop attention. Let's try it. If that's a thing. It's in our image server service. We do smart crop. Let's see. Maybe it's only crop and attention. I think it's called centre. Oh. Non-center entropy, attention, low, high, all entropy. Let's go for entropy. Let's see the original again. Let's fit again. Original content animals test. So I'm not sure if entropy, attention. Attention is definitely what we are seeking for. What is none? Let's go for that. Okay. Then we have center, which is, I guess, really the center of the image. So let's take another image from Unsplash. Portrait. Okay, most of those things are centered already. People, let's go for that. It's a sponsored one. Because I tried to find out what algorithm really is the best. Crop center, but let's stick with that for now. Which options were available? Low, high. Let's check them out. Low. And high seems to be the end of the file. Okay. And what did we have? All. That's also good. Okay. All versus none means the smallest of the constraints will be, or the biggest of the constraints, and none means the smallest of the constraints will. Maybe that's something we can incorporate into another URL. But for now, I guess I will call it a day. I have to wrap up now. I think it was a better start for this episode, for this series to kick off with giving you an overview what the goals are, also giving me the opportunity to focus on, okay, what are the goals, and then to set up the project, doing the Laravel installation, and also already playing around with the first routes we achieved to have the fit and the resize route. And I think that's a really good start for today, for our first episode. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for updates, and I see you soon in the Cantina. Thank you for watching. Bye.